Yo, yo, yo. What is going on? This is your boy Fluchax here. And today I'll be bringing you guys another video on basically how to set up configs and use them for APB Reloaded. Uh, and the same concept applies whether you're playing the game through the Steam or through Gamersfirst. So let's get started with that. Now, first thing is first. Let's understand this. Configs are basically configuration files, right? That include people editing lines of code with the game. Um, it is the same thing as using the Advanced APB Launcher, which is a tool that helps people select whatever advanced settings they want to change for the game. Same thing, except it's made for people who have trouble. Well, let me put it this way: it's for people to easily navigate through the game settings. It's graphical user interface based, so meaning you want to be going into actual game files and editing lines of code to get the exact setting you want. You can just use the sliders on the advanced launcher to have it set to whatever settings you need in the game. Now, regardless of you using the advanced APB launcher or not, the same concept applies. So, first thing is first, there are people out there in the community for this game who create configs. The most common is Flaws' config. Then you have Lasers config. Um, there's also my config, and I have two created. One for maximum settings with unlocked frames, and the other one is minimum settings with unlocked frames, which grants more FPS compared to the other config because obviously you're playing at minimum graphics. You have less things being processed in the background in the game, and yeah, you have less frames being used. So, because it's processing less items while the game is running. So, first things first, find the config you want to use, or if you're in the advanced launcher, I personally don't use the advanced launcher, but if you're using that tool, find the settings you want, save those settings. In terms of the config, you would have a folder that has a config. So, for example, I have this one right here. This is my config, it's maximum graphics. And I'll also put the link down in the description below so you guys can access my config. But basically, you would have a config, right? The config includes folders that have the game files, specific edited game files, compared to the default vanilla game files that are in APB Reloaded folder. And each of those edited files do specific things, which can be described in the folder name or um, usually it's in the folder name. It tells you what it's doing. Um, so this is my config file. Um, okay, let me go through what I have and I'll explain to you guys. So these two file names right here, the folder names, um, these are your default. Let's see, I can pull it up here. Right, so this is the config folder. This is the game folder. So basically what you're doing is you're putting specific edited config files back into the original game folder files. So you have APB game here and engine here in the config folder. You have the same thing over here in the game folder. So within that, there's a folder called config. And in my case, I have these particular files. They're all .ini files, which is basically approved by Little Orbit and SARD, the new anti-cheat for APB currently. Any other file edits you do besides .ini files and the localization files, like the JIR file, can get you banned. So just 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 know that I've said that and you've been warned. Do at your own risk on all the edits. Um, but yeah, so these particular files here, they edit the settings for the user's machine meaning the computer, um, as well as the game settings like certain keybinds, certain visual changes to the game itself like graphics, um, And yeah, that's pretty much it. So all of these files do that. Some of them are keybind related. Some of them are related to the user interface in the game. So how you see certain textures or windows or layers. But that's that. So this thing would go in here. As you can see, it's in the APB game file. So this is the folder right here. So in particular for the game, right, you have all these, but it's only going to replace these specific files that are located in here. So for example, this one is going to replace this one. This one will replace this one, and so on. Now, if you go into content, this is audio. So this basically what this folder does is disables the songs that are in the game. This is particularly useful for people who record videos on the game, or if they're streaming or broadcasting, mainly because you don't want to have, and especially if you're uploading something like content that's on YouTube or any other platform, you don't want to have actual songs playing in the background in the game and then hitting you with a copyright strike or a warning. So this file, this config particularly deals with the audio aspect, which deals with the songs that are available in the game through the music player, and it basically deletes those. So you wouldn't have any songs playing, and that's what this is. Localization, this is dealing with the language that you see in the game on the interfaces, including the mission description, the mission name, etc. That's all this. These are also existing in here. Localization, as you can see right here. This is the default one. All of these are edited according to my own interface edits. This isn't something you'll find anywhere else aside from me as a content creator. These are my own personal edits, and you're more than welcome to use them. If you see anybody else using it, obviously they got it from me. I haven't seen anyone use it, so most of the stuff in here are things I created on my own, aside from the stage name and the description simplification process, which was done by Flaws and other people. Everything else besides that you see in here is all done by me. And basically what this is, it deals with the different kinds of things you see in missions, such as the kill feed, waypoint names, waypoint colors, the kill feed color, kill feed description, the medal descriptions, the medal names, etc. Everything you see that pops up in the game in terms of a text is everything that's been edited by me, of course. That's custom, aside from the game's default edit, the text implementations. So that's what these folders are. That's in the localization. Now, engine, this deals with. So let me open this up real quick so you guys can see. So some of the stuff in here, mainly to note that the edits in here are related to FPS and other stuff, which I have another video that explains that process, but yeah. This one is from Floss's config. He has it to where this basically disables the texture stream and the garbage collection, which basically renders and processes it in the game every couple of seconds or so, which is one of the reasons why you guys experience the stutters or the freezes that happen in the game every now and then. This basically disables that. And of course, I have it simplified, so you basically would match it to your RAM size. So if you have 32 gigs of RAM or more, you'd use this one. If you have less than 32 gigs, like 8 or 16 gigs, you would use this folder. And if you don't know, the way you can check to see what RAM you have is you can, if you have something like this, Specky, you could use that, which basically analyzes your computer and tells you what's what. But you can also go in here, type my PC. And here it is, installed RAM. I have 32 gigs, so I would use the 32 gig folder. But if you have 8 or 16 right here, then you would use the other folder. So depending on what you have, you basically copy and paste in there. And in terms of my config, that is pretty much it. But I've also put some stuff in here that will help you guys in terms of dealing with crashes or errors. Like one thing in particular with Flaws' config, I don't know if you fixed it or not, but using, let's see in here, it's one of these folders. I think I have it written here somewhere. Nope. I'll have to find it. But basically, it deals with... so using this config, you may experience something where if you're going into the social district and you're trying to load at a kiosk, like the clothing kiosk, for example, or the vehicle design kiosk or any other kiosk, right? When you see that loading screen that pops up in the game, it's going to... it'll put you in an infinite loop of loading, basically. And the fix for that is also included in this config, which is this right here. And it tells you, so base engine. So you go into this file right here. There's a line of code that says this, and you would basically change the value as it's written in here. So that would fix your problem of getting the loading hang screen when trying to go into a kiosk at the social district. I've also put some improvements here for your GPU edits to make to gain more frames. And this applies to NVIDIA control panel. So if you have an AMD GPU, unfortunately I don't have an AMD GPU, so I don't know how that process works. But if you have something like NVIDIA control panel, but for AMD, you guys can figure that out. But yeah. All the information in here on what each file does and how you implement it into the game folder is written in all these text documents and stuff, so feel free to check those out. But basically, you'd have your config, right? And I recommend you copy and paste the config files. Do not cut and paste them. And when I say cut, I mean pressing Control X or going like this and cutting it. Do not do that. Because every week, Little Orbit releases the maintenance patch or updates or whatever. When they happen, every week or every other week, it's going to overwrite the game. Meaning you would have to you can't log into the game if you have that patch that's pending. You would have to update the game through the APB Launcher and make sure that patch gets installed. And in doing so, it's going to overwrite all your custom config files that were put into the game. And if you've been using the Advanced APB Launcher, it's going to overwrite those settings as well. So you'd have to do that process again, which is pretty standard. And most people who use custom files for this game know that. Another thing to note is that when you run that launcher to update the game, some people, it's also a good habit to get into, but after you run that patch or an update, go into the launcher and repair the game. And so I'll show you the process for that as well. So you go into your APB Reloaded folder. If you're using Steam, it's through Steam Apps, Common, and you would see APB Reloaded right here. I do not play APB Reloaded through Steam because you have multiple issues that happen when you play the game through Steam, and I noticed that a couple years ago. So ever since I noticed it, I've been playing APB Reloaded through the Gamersfirst install or the launcher, whatever. But yeah. So I have Gamersfirst, APB Reloaded, the launcher, and this is the APB launcher. So when you launch this, right, this is the thing you'll be doing when they release a patch or an update, right? You're gonna launch the launcher. It's gonna do its thing. It's gonna progress. It's gonna load. Once it's done, don't click start. Go into options and hit repair. This basically makes sure that anything that could have been corrupted or any value that could have been missing is gonna get patched. And it's basically running a check on those game files and comparing it to the default vanilla game settings that exists on their database. So that's what this is doing. If a change is found, it replaces it with the default. If not, it skips over it. That's basically what this is. So, and I recommend to run this thing twice just to avoid any problems. Now, when you do this, right, when it's updating here because of a patch or an update, it may overwrite some of those settings, like I said before. Or if you go into here and you run repair at any moment, it's going to do that. It's going to overwrite your past settings, right? So we wait until it's finished. Once it's completed, exit out of it. Do not click start, because at that point you'll be playing the game on default vanilla settings. You don't want to do that. If you're running a custom config, right, you go back into your config folder. So in my case, I'll be using my own. So this is the one I have. Basically copy these files, or in anyone's config folder, right? You basically copy those files. So you can highlight them like this, Control C, or you can just go like this and right click and copy. But once you copy, go back in here, Control V to paste, replace the files, because that's essentially what you want to do. You're overriding the default game settings with the custom config files, so you have to replace those. If you get this message, just click continue. If not, just let it finish and do its thing. Once that part is completed, you go into the next folder, do the same thing, copy it, paste it in here. And that is pretty much it. Now, once you finish the copying and pasting of the configs, go into this folder right here, binaries. The same applies if you're on Steam. It's just a different path, right? You're doing one thing through the Gamersfirst. You're doing the other thing through Steam, common apps. It's just different paths, same folders. So binaries, find this right here, apb.exe, the actual application. Right click it. If you're on Windows 11, just do show more options. If you're on Windows 10 or earlier, just go into right click and you would see this kind of menu. Go into send to, desktop create shortcut. So let me explain. This is the actual apb.exe. This application file right here is what starts the game up. So create a shortcut of it after you put the config files in that have the edited game files, right? That's what configs are. So basically you put that on your desktop here. Right click into that newly created shortcut, go into properties, and at the end here, you have a quotation mark, put one space bar, dash symbol, and type in language =, 1031, one space bar, dash symbol, no movies. So after the quotation mark, you have one space right here. Next to that space, you have a dash symbol. And then you have language =, 1031. Language = 1031 is basically associated with the JIR localization file. So when you use the localization custom, like for example, the custom kill feed, revealing of the stage name, the stage mission description, the amount of stages in a mission, all that stuff ties in with the localization file. All of those are text edits. And those text edits in the localization file deals, specifically the JIR folder, deals with this language sign or number. As far as I know, and I could be wrong, but as far as I know, this is how it works. And so this number is associated with that type of file. After 1031, you have one more space, and then next to that space you have another dash symbol, and then no movies. And I have all this arguments listed in the config and what they do specifically, but I'll tell you guys as well. So no movies basically it disables the movie screen that plays when you're launching the game up. It saves you about 10 to 20 seconds from having to sit through that, trying to click it to skip it, or in some cases, people they just let it play out. But it basically, by putting a no movies argument in, it skips that whole movie basically because that's what it is. The movie that shows up when you launch the game, the movie that shows up when you're going into the loading screen. It basically cuts those to zero basically. So less loading time. Once you've done that, just click apply and click OK, right? And that is it. That is it in terms of configs. So every time you want to play the game, you would start it up through the shortcut that you created. So by double clicking onto this, you would start the game up, right? You do not want to start the game up through the APB Launcher. So what I mean by APB Launcher is this one right here. This thing right here. Because when you start this up, it's going to overwrite all of your game settings or repair it. Meaning it's going to put the game back into default vanilla settings. You don't want to do that. Because that's the whole point of why you're even watching this video, right? That's the whole point why you're using a config in the first place. That's the whole point why you're using an advanced APB launcher. So you can play with the in-depth advanced custom settings for the game. So that's pretty much it in terms of configs. If you're using the advanced APB launcher, like I said, I do not use it. But for those that do, the process to that is most of you guys already know how it works, but this is the official site. This right here, this is the advanced launcher where you can actually download it, the one that's actually approved by Little Orbit, because in the past, before Little Orbit took over, the advanced launcher was already a thing back when Gamersfirst was running the game. And there was a bunch of people or a person who helped in creating this. But basically, it provides an advanced option tweaking for the game that users can do on a simple graphical user interface. So you just basically download that if you don't have it. It's the same thing as what I did right here, config files, except with the advanced launcher, you can actually mess around with it and find your own custom settings that you want to play with, rather than going into the game files and editing lines of code. Some people, they don't want to go through that habit, so they just use configs made from other creators, like me, or Flaws, or Lasers. But that's pretty much it. So if you're using it through that, I believe you go into that interface. You go into the settings. You select whatever settings you want to use for the game. You can do that through the sliders they offer in there. And most of the settings are all based on bits. So it's like, 32, 64, 512, 128, 1024, and stuff like that. 4096, and so on. So the higher you go up on those, the more graphic based you will see. The less you go down in value, of course, the closer you'll get to the minimum quality of the graphics. But that's pretty much it. You basically select those settings that you want. You save them, and then you click on Start APB or Start, or whatever the option is to start. If for some reason you're getting errors because of that tool, or if for some reason it's not working, you can try saving the settings, and instead of starting the game through that launcher, especially if the problem is related to the launcher, what you want to do is go into your binaries. So like I said earlier, before you go into your game folder, binaries folder, and you basically right click this, send to desktop, create shortcut, put that thing right here on your desktop, right? The shortcut, go into properties, and add the target, apply an OK, and you'd basically start the game from your newly created shortcut. So save whatever settings you want to use in the Advanced APB Launcher, exit out of the launcher, open up binaries, and create the shortcut. Each time you save your custom settings through the launcher, it's going to update all of those files in the game folder. Once you do that, you can manually go into the binaries folder like I showed you here, and make sure you create a new shortcut, because the new shortcut is going to have the new settings applied into it. If you're gonna save the settings and then you go back into binaries, and I mean technically you wouldn't be going back into binaries, because at that point you'd have like what, one or two icons of the same thing on your desktop. You basically confuse yourself because of that, and you would also start the old APB Reloaded up that has the default settings or your past settings, and it's not gonna work. So every time you put a config in after you run the APB launcher, because the patch or an update came out every week or every other week, or if you save the settings through the Advanced APB Launcher and an error or a crash happens, you always go back into the binaries folder, create a new shortcut from that APB application to your desktop view, rename it if you want, it doesn't really matter, so you can keep track of it. If you have more than one APB shortcuts on your desktop, and you'd basically put the parameters in the target field, and you'd start the game up just like that. So I will load mine up here. There's a third argument which I haven't put, but you can also put that in the target field. It's called no splash. So it would be a dash symbol, and then you would write no splash. And basically what that does is it disables this splash screen that you guys see. That's what no splash would do. It doesn't have any proper benefits or anything like that. But it's up to you if you want to keep stuff like that. It's your personal preference, and that's pretty much it. So this is the max settings config that I used. And yeah. Like I said, I have two configs, one for max graphics, one for minimum graphics. Both of the configs have the frame lock set to unlimited, so you would get the most frames possible that your hardware outputs, basically. And that's pretty much it. If you guys run into any issues, feel free to say them in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to look at each one of them. But that is pretty much it. Anyways, hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys learned a lot. I didn't want to cut and make things short, leaving out all of the details that are important. So this is like the full video. But yeah. And this is updated as of September the 12th, 2024. So, yeah. Thanks for checking out the video. If you like the content, make sure you subscribe, like. If you have any issues, leave them in the comments below. If it worked for you, put that down in the comment section below so that other people can find it useful. And if you run into any issues or anything like that, like I said, put them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to check them out. We'll get a fix going together, and if anyone else has any issue, they'll be tagged along, or they'll come on into the video if they find it one way or another. And yeah, if they have any problems, it's gonna get fixed. Anyways, take care, y'all.